This weekend I got a chance to stay with my uncle for a bit. We never really talked much before then, but this weekend I learned so much. It started over dinner. We made small talk and I complimented him on the food. And my aunt said he learned all he knew from the asylum. My ears perked up a bit. Were you in an insane asylum? No, he laughed. I worked with the people in the kitchen. Cooking helped calm the people, but I also sometimes had to deal with all-hands-on-deck situations. This really perked my interest. I've always been interested in insane people, and I'm not sure why my mom never mentioned that her uncle, he's our great-uncle, worked at an insane asylum. Maybe she didn't know either. I immediately asked for another story, and I told him I could handle the worst of the worst. But he didn't want to go to all that. Instead, he told me this story, and a few others. Instead, he told me this story. It was late October, 23rd of 1967. I remember the date because it was a week after your aunt gave birth to your cousin Leroy. I was working in the kitchen with some of the easier guys, the ones whose treatment was working. We lock up all the knives and everything, obviously. I would get up each morning and pre-cut everything, so we didn't have to get the knives out at all for anything. It took away a lot of flavor, but it was the safest thing to do for obvious reasons. That morning I got in and grabbed the knives out and began to do the prep work for the day. I was always alone in the kitchen. Nothing seemed out of place at all. I went along whistling and talking to myself. Then I went back to pick up one of the paring knives and I couldn't find it. It was in the set a minute ago, but now it wasn't. I figured I'd dropped it and began looking around for it on the floor. I couldn't find it. See, when things go missing, your mind instantly thinks of how you must have lost it, and you forget what you were doing or where you were going, and you get all paranoid, intent on finding it. I did this, but then something in my head said, "Go tell someone." That's when it hit me. It must have been stolen. I had learned my first year that insane people have a way with going places they shouldn't be, and magically disappearing. It's our job to make sure they don't disappear out of the asylum and into public. But this, a knife? It could be deadly. I ran outside, locking the door behind me in case whoever it was still in there, and ran out to tell someone. The whole place went on lockdown. Everyone and everything was searched, but we couldn't find the paring knife. At this point, everyone, and I mean everyone, was accounted for. We all went into the kitchen and searched. No knife. Everyone else asked me if I knew for a fact it had gone missing. To prove it, I showed them a potato I had peeled that morning with it. We all agreed that it was weird, but I'm sure you know that sometimes things can literally disappear into a void. I blamed myself, and I offered to pay for a new knife and apologized for the inconvenience. But we all agreed that the safety of the staff was the most important thing. Still nervous, I asked for someone to help me in the kitchen, just in case there was an unaccounted-for crazy lurking, I don't know, on the ceiling or something. I actually looked up to see if there was something or someone up there. One of the guys felt bad and hung out with me in the kitchen. Probably an hour into it, while we were joking, I was feeling much better when we went into another lockdown. Over the intercom, we heard for everyone to stay where they were and keep the doors locked. That was different. Lockdowns usually meant you do that until the place is cleared. So why the clarification? Me and the guy I was with kept working away, and when we were done, we were still in lockdown. I phoned the front desk, and a weird voice answered. "Insane asylum full of creeps and geeks. How can we fuck you over today?" I looked at the phone and hung it up. I basically thought at this point we were in trouble. In 1967, we didn't have 911, so I phoned the local police and let them know that I thought the asylum was in a great deal of trouble. We waited in that kitchen for about 4 hours before a police officer showed up. He asked us to open the door. Me and my friend just looked at him strange, as if wondering if it was real. We both held knives behind our backs, looking a bit crazy ourselves. Then we saw the head doctor, blood all over his coat. He said, "Let them in, boys." We opened the door. Naturally, we begged to know what had happened. Apparently, one of the employees had stolen the knife when I was washing some lettuce in the sink. He waited for the all clear, then began opening the cells of the crazy people and trapped all the workers in the closet. One of the insane people stole the paring knife and killed him, then went around attacking other insane people in the hallways. My phone call saved a lot of lives that day. Without it, and being in that locked room, I'm not sure how long those men would have been trapped, and how many of the insane would have died by one stupid paring knife. It was truly a terrible day. Back in 1973, political correctness as we know it was non-existent, so we had names for all our patients. There was one we called the Mumbler, because he used to mumble as he walked. He was harmless, but some of the things he would say were the most screwed up things you'd ever heard. The way he stood, it was just downright creepy. He had his hands pulled in, like a picture of someone being paranoid, wringing his hands constantly, and it was pulled up to his face as he mumbled. He'd walk the halls aimlessly and just mumble. The nurses and doctors used to tell us, if any of the crazy people made conversation, to play along with them, act like we were right there with them in their struggle. When they heard voices, we heard them too. I used to play along like this sometimes, but I don't work with true crazy people much, and when the Mumbler joined the cooking classes, he was pretty well useless. He just stood there and mumbled. One day I tried again to see if he would join in. I walked up to him and realized right away that he'd soiled his diaper. He smelled absolutely awful. Now, don't get me wrong, I cared for these people. That's why I was there. I called out a nurse and out loud said he crapped himself. Most of the time, these crazies know they are crazy and don't care when you say stuff out loud like that, and more than likely are totally oblivious altogether. But this guy screamed so loud, it was ear-piercing. This scared everyone in the room, and he kept repeating it over and over. The nurses gave me a mean look and took him away screeching in the halls about how he defecated himself. I knew this one was probably one of those guys that was found painting the walls of his own house with his feces. I didn't think anything about him other than how weird he was. Crazy people are crazy, and yes, it was out of the ordinary, but not really when you consider those sick experiments those people went through. He never came back to classes after that. 6 months later, I was walking down the halls when I saw him again, this time without a nurse. I figured he had gotten out. I asked him where he was supposed to be. Even though you know for a fact a crazy person isn't dangerous, you still need to make sure you don't just walk up and grab them. I knew this after years of getting attacked by them. So I kept my distance, and he didn't respond. He just mumbled. I listened to him, and I could make out this. Mama, Mama, I killed Mama, killed Mama. Daddy, Daddy, I killed him too. Dad killed him too. Jerry hurt me first. He had to die. But Sissy, why did I kill Sissy? Why did I kill Sissy? My heart skipped a beat. I realized he was counting on his hands. When he got to his sister, it was like he was actually wondering why he'd killed her. I kept listening. Wife, you leaked red. Why did you do that? Baby, head was full of worms and gum. I had to let them out. I had to eat them so you would be safe. I wasn't sure how to handle the situation, but I was pretty sure the mumbler was a guy who snapped, killed his whole family, and it turned his brain into mush. I looked at him and said, Harold, buddy, let's go see the nurses. He looked at me with black, beady eyes. His hands stopped moving because he stopped counting. My heart started racing. He looked at me and said, Why do I kill? When will the voices stop? When will the voices stop? Like I said before, the nurses always said, play along. So I did. Harold, what are the voices saying? God, I knew this was a loaded question. Kill. They always want me to kill. Kill people. They told me we were all trapped, Bill. He grabbed his skin when he said trapped. This guy seemed to be told that we are trapped in our own bodies, and when we die, we are released. I don't think he was trying to discuss philosophy with me. My heart started racing again. His hands went to his sides. He had no weapon, but he could still attack me. I had to think on my feet how to distract him and get the nurse's attention without escalating the situation. Harold, let's tell the voices together to shut up, I suggested. He nodded. Let's yell. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Together we screamed shut up for about 10 seconds. The nurses, of course, came running and took him and detained him. He immediately began struggling as they were so rough with him. He repeated shut up over and over. Then he just screamed nonsensically over and over, and they put him in a straitjacket and hauled him off to his room. I was obviously obligated to write a statement for the incident. I let the doctors know what I did, and the head doctor praised me and said I'd handled a tight situation rather well. Never ever approach a crazy person with the idea they are going to be calm and collected just because they've been through therapy. The doctor closed his door behind me and asked me to sit down. Do you know why he is here? He asked. Of course I didn't, and I told him so. He was normal like you and I, but when he came back from Vietnam, his mind, well, it never left the war. One day he just snapped. He started screaming and killed his entire family. He looked at me and paused. I knew there was more. They found him, Bill, eating the brains of his child, his baby Bill. I looked wide-eyed at him and said, "What the hell?" I remember how Harold had talked about worms in the head of his baby. The doctor turned around and looked out the window of his office. "War is tragic, Bill. Harold is unfortunately one of those people we can't help. We can't kill him, Bill. So he just sits in the hospital, heavily sedated, counting the people he's killed. I'm not sure how he got out, but if he is ever unattended or given a weapon, I don't know what he would do." The doctor grabbed his pen off his desk and toyed with it a bit. "Bill, sometimes I wonder if we'll ever end up like him. One day you're a normal guy, the next you're a psychopath walking the halls of an asylum, defecating yourself, and counting all the people you've killed. Sometimes I just wonder." He paused for a minute.